I can see quite a few people joining now, so we should be good to start. So thank you very much for joining us. My name is Matt Ellis. I'm a Senior Health and Safety Advisor working for a HAE Business Guard in association with Stallard Kane. I'm going to be hosting today's webinar. I'm going to be passing you over to my colleague shortly, Faye Bevington, Training Manager, who is going to be carrying out a presentation today on mental health tips for home working, furloughed staff and for personnel returning to the workplace. So Faye, if I can hand over to you now.
Lovely, thank you, Matt.
No
Good
problem.
afternoon, everybody. As Matt's just introduced me, I'm Faye Bevington. I'm the training manager working with HAE Business Guard in conjunction with Stallard Kane Associates Limited. I'm going to talk to you a bit today about hopefully some top tips that you'll be able to take away from this for looking after not only staff that you may have who are working from home, staff that you have who are furloughed, and also now staff that will be returning to the workplace. For some people, obviously, they won't have been in work for quite some time. It's going to be quite daunting. So what we're looking at during this presentation is how we can help to create a healthy work culture. So obviously March this year saw the government issue guidelines which included home working. So for those of us that were able to work from home, myself included, it was a bit of a rush for companies to be able to get us to work from home as quickly and efficiently as possible. So it's a real shift in how businesses were working. So right now it's vital that we create a healthy work culture so that we can ensure that human connections are kept as much as possible and that we can mitigate those feelings of isolation that some people might be going through. So this presentation is going to hopefully offer you some practical solutions and guidance for yourself and for your staff. Each slide, the way I've designed it, is split into 4 sections. So we're going to be looking at who is affected, what the problem is, why we need to look at it, and then how we can look at putting measures into place. Now the who is going to be consistent throughout the presentation because it's obviously going to be yourselves and all of the staff that you look after. So the first topic I wanted to talk about was communication. It's really vital now more than ever that we maintain good communication, and like I say, we're looking at trying to mitigate those feelings of isolation. As an employer, you've got a duty of care to look after all of your staff's well-being. So what can you look at doing? Using video conferencing software, we're currently using Zoom as our platform. There are many others available. It really does encourage those open lines of communication and feel like those bonds are still there when you're actually seeing people and talking to them. So that's something that we found is really, really beneficial. One-to-one meetings with staff is obviously something you would have been able to previously do just in your office, but doing it over these video conferencing software platforms that are available is perfectly fine in this situation. And times where you maybe would have just picked up the phone and spoken to somebody, you know, take that little bit of extra time out of your day and make that call so it's face to face, so you can have that interaction with them. Encouraging virtual social gatherings. So what I've done with my staff, I manage a team of people. Some are still in work, working from home, and others are furloughed. So I actually have coffee afternoons. We actually do it every day. So we have 2:30 every day. We all sit down, we have a coffee. We don't tend to talk about work issues. We just open those lines of communication so that we're maintaining those bonds and having that relationship. Some other departments are just doing once a week, but I think it's really important to kind of keep those bonds in place as much as we can, because not being in an office environment is obviously going to make that a lot harder. Another thing that I think is really important is actually just sharing some positive stories. There's so much negative information out there at the moment on social media platforms. It's very easy to get drawn into that. So actually, if you do have a positive story, maybe about one of your clients or one of your colleagues, one of my colleagues, his little boy actually shaved his hair off for charity, and he raised hundreds and hundreds of pounds doing that. It was a really nice story. So we internally sent that out, but we also took the time to send that out in our bulletin to our clients as well. What I do want to mention in terms of communication is that everybody is going to have different ways in which they like to communicate. and that will fluctuate depending on what they have going on in their own lives. So you might have somebody that's really struggling one week and actually need to touch base with them a little more. A few weeks later, they're in a better place and they don't need as much contact from you. So just be mindful that it does have to fluctuate, and you do have to really pay attention to the needs of your staff and kind of make sure that you're communicating with them in a way that is suitable at that time for them. So routine is incredibly important. All of our routines have changed massively. You know, personally, I don't have to commute to work anymore. I really enjoyed that as kind of my downtime, listening to music in the car, really kind of decompressing before my day and at the end of my day. So that's certainly something that my routine has changed. Helping your staff to maintain a routine is really going to enable them to have a sense of control over a situation, and the more control you have over a situation, the less anxiety people tend to feel about it. So we need to look at ways that we can help people create new routines. It's really important to encourage your staff to actually get dressed. The way that I found doing this is actually just because I can call them on a video conferencing platform like this. That in itself is enough of a reason that they're not going to sit around in their pajamas and work. And that really does help to distinguish between when you're at work and when you're at home. Even though you're working in your home, you really do need to have that time distinguished whilst you're there, because otherwise everything can blur and it can feel quite oppressive and overwhelming. Creating a workplace, which we'll come on to in a bit. We want to define those hours of work. Again, like I said, you know, the lines can blur very easily when you're working from home, and you may find yourself working into the evenings or working late at night. But what we need to do is looking at flexibility for our staff. So you may have people that are homeschooling or looking after dependents, and you, as much as your business will allow, offer some flexibility around that, but also defining those hours of work. So one of my colleagues is homeschooling her 2 children. So what we've allowed her to do is start work earlier in the morning. So she does a lot of her working day before her kids start her schooling with them. And then from 9 to 1, she does some homeschooling, spends a bit of time with them in the afternoon, and then works into the evening. And we find that works really well. So it's being flexible with her, but also allowing us as a business to find times where she will be available for work. Really important as well to ensure that all of your staff that are working from home are taking lunch breaks. We found it especially difficult with people that are covering the phones, not maybe at the start having enough additional support to actually allow them to feel that they can walk away from that phone and have a proper lunch break. So it might be, if you're in that situation, that you look, which is what we did, at other members within the business being able to provide additional support at busy times for you. And finally, the point on here about time management. You may have staff that you have never had an issue with time management at all, that have always met deadlines, have never struggled with anything. But what you may find now is that the whole situation is so overwhelming to them that things like time management whilst they're at work is actually slipping a little bit. So again, if you're communicating with your staff, be really clear and concise about what your expectations are and what your deadlines are and what's a priority. And that will just come through having those normal conversations anyway. So Workspace. Creating a workspace in the home is obviously the issue that we need to do. We're now working from an office environment and we're placing that into our homes. What we want to be able to encourage our staff to do is have a clear, non-cluttered workspace, because this really does help people feel organised. And again, it's that sense of control, which we don't really have a lot of at the moment. So anything that we can feel in control of, it's really important to encourage that. The first thing that I would recommend that you're doing is looking at sending out your display screen equipment assessments for your staff to complete in your home. So they will come back, and off the back of that, you're obviously going to know about the workstation that your staff are working in, whether it's suitable, whether screens are at the right height, whether the chair is at the right height for them. All these things are going to come off the back of that assessment. Now, what Stella Kane were able to do, as an example, was actually provide some equipment to our staff. So what that meant was that actually you could go into the office at a set time, collect an office chair, collect a laptop riser, and take that home. Obviously that had to be maintained using obviously social distancing measures and following all the government guidelines. So if that's something that you're looking at doing, you would need to ensure that you have a manager present that can obviously oversee that whole situation. Now, not everybody is going to have the luxury of being able to take home office equipment, but again, what that assessment is going to show you is that actually there are things that you can do in your home. So, you know, you may have staff where their laptop's not at the right angle. You can recommend putting that on books and lifting that up. You may have staff where the chair's just not quite suitable, it's not quite at the right height. You could suggest maybe using cushions to kind of bolster the height up. So there's lots of things you can do if you're not able to actually provide specific equipment. Creating a temporary zone is something I want to talk about briefly. It's something that I know colleagues of mine have had to do, where actually they're not able to create a separate workspace. So it may be that they're working in their kitchen or in their lounge. And I know people that have actually used bed sheets to hang up to actually kind of differentiate that space for that amount of time that you're actually working. Again, it is a really tricky situation for everybody, and those temporary zones, you know, you need to still encourage people that at the end of the day, pack down as much as you can, because what you don't want staff doing is actually looking at piles of paperwork throughout the day and into the evening, because it's just going to increase that anxiety. You know, really encourage people, when you're done, pack down, only have out what you're working on. Working in a light and airy space is obviously beneficial to everybody, but the main thing that I wanted to mention is just reassure your staff that it's okay, that things will happen. I mean, I have a cat, he likes to jump on my lap at random times. You know, I've had to apologise more than once for that happening. You know, I've had people that I manage that suddenly their children start crying, or children start arguing, or something happens in the background, they have to go and deal with it, and that is absolutely fine. And I think it is really, really important that we reassure people that, you know, right now these things are just going to happen, we're just going to roll with it, and that it's not going to be a big problem.
I think just to touch on one of those points that you made, Faye, the temporary working zones, and I've got a couple of friends who live in apartments in city centres, and they've had to, because they're limited with what working area they've got, they've had to differentiate their living room into different zones, so it allows them to move away at break times as well, I think, from their workstation, having that temporary, even like you said, bed sheets or just something, just a bit of a divide, a physical divide. It really has helped them with their mental health, definitely.
Yeah, and it's like, so it's just having that differentiation, just having that separate space, even if you are sat in your lounge, knowing that actually if you're to the left of the bed sheet, you're at work, if you're to the right, then you're at home. It really does help. Not ideal, but, you know, like I say, you've just got to make the best of the situation as we can at the moment. Absolutely.
And just to touch on something else, guys, I did put it in the chat. If you've got any questions for Faye, please use the Q&A function. We'll be able to address them at the end of the presentation, and then if you have any technical difficulties, just drop me a message in the chat and I can try and assist you as best I can. So I'll hand back over to you, Faye.
Lovely, thank you, Matt. So wellbeing, as I mentioned earlier, there's a duty of care as an employer to look after the wellbeing of your staff. A lack of social interaction right now is causing massive feelings of isolation, routine changes, causing anxiety, and just generally there's a lot of worry and concern around the health impact, financial impact, and long-term effects of COVID-19. So things that we can do to encourage positive well-being in our staff is encouraging that routine, as I've just mentioned. We really need to allow them to help them split themselves between being at work and being at home, even if that is whilst they're at home. Encouraging daily exercise, I'm going to come on to that a bit in the next slide. Encouraging movement at your desk. So the HSE recommends that every hour you have 5 minutes away from your desk, get up, walk around, make a drink, come back. but actually there's a lot of information out there that you can send to your staff about different exercises that you can do, because I myself do it. I might sit down at my desk solely for kind of 2-3 hours, and because there's no interruptions as there would be in an office, I'm actually not getting up and walking away, but I'm trying to introduce daily exercises to myself that I've sent out to my team, just to ensure that obviously your neck muscles, your shoulder muscles, they're not seizing up, and you're getting up as regularly as you can. Again, with your well-being, it's about being flexible with your employees as much as you can, as your business will allow, having that flexibility in there. So actually they're not in this constant kind of state of turmoil around, oh, you know, I should be working, but I've got the kids and the kids need me, or the dependents need me, or I've got my elderly nan that I need to take food shopping to, whatever that looks like. Just be as flexible as you can, because, you know, we're all in the same situation at the moment, but everybody's reaction and everybody's living environment is going to be slightly different. So we just need to take that into account when we're dealing with our staff. Healthy eating, again, I'm going to come on to that in a little bit, because that's really important. But communication, ensure that all of your staff, you're communicating with all of them, especially with those on furlough. As I said earlier, I have a virtual coffee with all of my staff in the afternoon, including my staff that are on furlough. It's really, really important, because your staff can very easily feel, especially those that are on furlough, they can feel very detached from your business very quickly, and like they just don't really matter anymore. So, you know, invite them into team meetings if they want to come into it. Obviously they can't actively do any work, but if they want to sit in on that, that's no problem at all, just so that they're obviously aware of things that are going on. Having those coffees, having those catch-ups with everybody, I think is really important. But also I think it's important as a business, if you can, for another member of staff to also be in contact with your team, because actually when you're in a big building, you know, you see different people when you're getting a tea or coffee, or you're having your lunch, and you have all of those different interpersonal conversations and relationships that happen, whereas it can become quite insular, that you're only looking after your team, so your team only has you and themselves. But actually encourage somebody to speak to a different team member, or, you know, invite somebody else into your virtual coffee club that you might have. It really does maintain those bonds that obviously people have built up over years in some circumstances working together. You know, there was kind of at the start of lockdown, there was people I hadn't spoken to in weeks, so I then have made it kind of my personal mission to make sure I contact everybody, even if they're not in my team, just to obviously check in on them and see how they're getting on with everything, because like I said, we're all in this, but we all are having different experiences. So healthy habits, there's a lot to say about this one. So healthy habits are something that can be broken in no time at all, and they can take months to build up. Before lockdown, I was obsessively going to the gym. I'd kind of started that journey last summer, and I was really, really enjoying it. And then all of a sudden that was taken away from me, and that was for me personally, it was a really big release in the evening going to the gym. It was good for my mental health, kind of having that time to myself entirely, where nobody else needed me for anything, and actually be able to switch off. So I went from being really, really active to being stuck at home, and that's how I thought of it, was being stuck at home. I know colleagues of mine are members of running clubs, or would do weekly Zumba and boxercise. So actually then to have that all taken away, it's incredibly easy for staff just to become inactive and unfit, and there are so many links between your physical activity and your physical health, and how they can improve your mental health. So the two things are really, really interlinked. So personally, what I looked at doing with my staff, and again, this is my staff that were still working from home, and also my staff that were furloughed. So I set up different challenges. So the first challenge I set up was a virtual walking challenge. So we set a distance, which actually in our example was the Inca Trail. And each of us in the team, we have to walk cumulatively the distance of the Inca Trail across the month of May. Which is really, really good. It was getting everybody involved, everybody talking to each other, a lot of camaraderie. But what I actually found was that two of the staff that I look after that have got young children, weren't able to participate in that kind of challenge, and it actually made them feel a little bit left out. So what then we looked at doing was running an additional challenge based around what they could actually assign time to during the day, and it actually turned out to be a squat challenge, which is something that they could do, you know, 5 here, 5 somewhere else in the day, going up to 100. And it meant that we were able to include them into a challenge. So whatever you're thinking about doing with your staff, if it is something along the lines of virtual challenges in terms of exercise, which really does help to, like I say, encourage people to stay fit, to stay healthy, being mindful of everybody in your team, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to do something that excludes people. You need to look at maybe one thing or a couple of things that people can join. And like I say, I found it was a really good way to maintain that camaraderie and that teamwork between the people that I look after. Another thing on here to talk about is daily walking. Obviously, we're now allowed to go outside for unlimited exercise, but up till really recently, it was only kind of that 1 hour of exercise that was allowed outside, which tended to be really walking or running for people. I'm not a runner at all, but I really enjoy walking, and there are so many benefits that come with it. It's proven to boost your energy. You physically cannot look at a screen if you are walking outside. You know, you can't look at your laptop screen. I would hope that you're not looking at your phone, because that wouldn't be particularly safe. So you're just actually having that time to shut down and just think about something completely different, whether you're walking with music in, but just really not being at your screen, I think is really important. Obviously, you're outside in natural light, vitamin D production. And for me, I found that I was using my lunch breaks to go for a walk, and it was kind of allowing me to reset, so that when I came back in the afternoon, I was able to concentrate more on what I was doing. Eating healthily is something that I mentioned in that previous slide, and I just want to come back to. It's really important to encourage your staff to have a healthy eating plan in place. This is something that if they've got families at home, they can get their whole family involved in. Looking at, if you've got kids, creating a schedule for when meals are going to happen, getting the kids involved in healthy eating recipes. It may be something that if you're sending out like a weekly communication to your staff about government updates, you could put on there a healthy recipe idea each week, or just different ideas, so that actually people aren't just kind of reaching for the unhealthy snacks, you know, in their day, that they have a set lunch break every day. They have that time with their children, that where they can have lunch together with their partners, and actually kind of splitting your meals out throughout the day and having that routine and structure in there. It helps to keep your blood sugar levels at like a constant rate, so you're not peaking and troughing, and you're not reaching for like unhealthy snacks and things like that. And obviously drinking water, plenty of it. Actually, I myself didn't do that very well when we started working from home. I'm always kind of accused of drinking lots of water in the office all the time, and I'm always by the water cooler. But actually, when I was at home, it wasn't something I really thought about, and I got very dehydrated. So although it sounds very obvious, actually it's something to really think about, encouraging people to eat healthily, drink healthily. Alcohol is something, again, I just want to mention quickly. It can often be used by people as a coping mechanism for different stresses and anxieties that they're going through. But it's really important to remember that alcohol can lead to a lower mood, and it can also affect your immune system as well. So if you are sending out that weekly communication to your staff, which I would recommend, actually put on there different ways that they can look at maybe managing their stress. You might want to look at recommending meditation or different hobbies. There's lots of different things that are available online, lots of tools and resources that you can send out to your staff for them to have different options available to them if they want them.
Yeah, just to make another point there, Faye, I think the gym routine that you touched on, you know, you got into a habit of going to the gym in an evening. Some people religiously go before work, sometimes maybe even go on dinner. I think it's really important for employers especially to understand that it might be worth its weight in gold, giving someone that extra half an hour or an hour in the day. It might be in the middle of the working day, just to jump onto Facebook Live or Instagram Live or YouTube, whatever it might be, to join in a live workout and feel part of a community and get that routine back. That might do them the world of good. I know it's definitely helped with myself. We're lucky that I've been given the flexibility to, you know, if there's something on at 3 o'clock and there's nothing in my diary, then yeah, I can jump onto Instagram and join in with one of the workouts and feel part of the community and carry on that routine. So I think that's really important, like you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just comes down to that flexibility. I think that's really the key throughout this whole presentation is flexibility and reassurance with your staff. It's just so important. You know, we all need to do what we can to help each other out. And if that is giving somebody an hour at 3 o'clock, if you know then that actually they'll make that extra hour up at between 5 and 6, and as long as your business can allow that, then there really is, you know, there's so much benefit that can come to the person from having that flexibility. I think it really does speak volumes.
Absolutely. Of course, it is business dependent, isn't it? You can't. It's every individual company's circumstances. But if you've got someone working from home, or if you've got furloughed staff in your team, maybe encourage them to, if you found a good workout or a good routine that you can get in touch with them and encourage those guys to do it too.
Yeah, and I think that's the key as well there. Don't forget about your furloughed staff. It's very easy because we're all very busy, because we're in work, we're picking up, in a lot of cases, the work of other people. And sadly, a lot of the furloughed staff, I think, you know, they're just dropping out of people's minds a little bit, but actually they need that more than probably the staff that are still working, because they can become very isolated very quickly without any kind of routine or interaction from the working community, really.
Yeah, definitely. Fully agree.
Lovely. Okay, so just going to touch briefly on financial resilience. So you may actually have some employees who might require some guidance on how to manage their finances due to this current situation, especially if you have got staff that have been furloughed and they've dropped down to about 80% of their wage. There are so many studies that kind of show the correlation between how your mental health and your well-being can be affected by financial issues. So this is really about saying that, you know, as a business, be prepared that you may well be asked these questions from some of your staff. You don't need to actively kind of engage with them on it, but if somebody comes to you, you need to be able to look at potentially signposting them to people. Just really encourage people, you know, that they can have these conversations with you if they need to. I think it's really important, as I keep saying, you know, if you're sending out that kind of weekly bulletin to your staff, you can put links to the government website on there, communicate what financial support is available, and encourage your employees that if they need to, you know, there is help available through banks, you know, mortgage providers, loan providers, you know, heating and energy providers, all these kind of things. You know, there is definitely support out there for people that have been affected by this. So I don't think, like I say, you need to actively be ringing every member of staff and talking about this, but they just need to know that actually as a business, you're able to signpost them to different places that may be able to help them more. So this doesn't follow the format of the rest of the slides. This is slightly different, but I just wanted to touch on a few points here. So it's really important to remember, guys, that if you have got employees with any existing mental health problems that you're aware of, they may not be able to access their normal support networks that they have. So it's really important, like I keep saying, you know, have those open lines of communication, because you may find that actually those staff are potentially struggling more than other people already, just because of pre-existing things that are in their lives. So, you know, maybe talk to them more. There might be other things that you can suggest to help them out, but, you know, be more mindful of those staff would be the first thing I want to say here. If you have an internal HR department, then look to them to provide support for you as managers, because they may be able to help you review any support services that are available. Review any employee assistance programs that you may have. So if you have an EAP in place, it may be that actually it's not quite fit for purpose now. So you may have one that actually concentrated a lot on face-to-face counselling, for example. Obviously that can't happen at the moment, so you just want to make sure that if you have an EAP in place, actually they've switched over to kind of like telephone or Zoom or Teams meetings or whatever it looks like, so that they're still able to actually fulfill your requirement for them. And as well, if you have it, promote it out to your staff heavily, because people kind of forget about things until they need to actually use it. So just make sure that they are aware that this is there for them. If you have any mental health first aiders within your business, ensure that they're actually equipped to speak to staff over digital platforms, and also promote this regularly. There's no point sending your mental health first aiders home and then them not being able to talk to any of the staff. So I'm a mental health first aider. I've obviously got access to a webcam, so I'm able to still talk to people in like a face-to-face way, and I found that's really beneficial. But you know, really push it out, really remind your staff that your mental health first aiders are there. And it will be your mental health first aiders that can encourage people that go to them to use different resources that are available. We'll be able to signpost them to maybe mental health charities, maybe local Facebook groups, lots of different things, either locally or nationally. So I would definitely say, if you have your mental health first aiders, like I say, push that out to all of your staff, let them know that they're there, and provide your mental health first aiders with whatever technology they need to be able to stay in touch with all of your staff. Family time, as I touched on earlier, you're going to have some people that have got children and dependents at home. So it's really important to allow staff, again, this is as your business can allow, to have that time with their family if they need it, if they're homeschooling. You know, the lack of social interaction at the moment is really leading to a lot of feelings of isolation and depression for a lot of people. If you have staff that live by themselves, check in on them maybe more than you would others, because they will be the first that are going to be really feel those feelings of isolation. If you've got staff that have taken laptops home and they have webcams, and obviously again your company allows it, allow them to use the video conferencing platforms to talk to their family, to talk to their friends. Something I'm doing with my friends, we do a weekly quiz. With my parents, I have Sunday brunch with them every other weekend. It's a really, really nice way for us to stay in contact, but it's a scheduled way for us to stay in contact, because I think it can become very easy that we'll just, oh, we'll ring such and such tomorrow, or I'll get round to it, or I'm busy. But actually, again, it comes back to routine. Having that routine in place really does allow people to have a sense of control. So I know that every couple of weeks I'm going to have brunch with my parents, and it's lovely. But yeah, like I say, check in on your furloughed staff, check in on those that are isolated, because they will be the ones that are missing that kind of interaction from being in the workplace and being around people. Now, returning to the workplace is obviously very new as of kind of last week with the announcements that came out. So what the issue is we need to ensure that all of the staff are going to be safe when they're returning to the workplace. Why do we need to look at this? The issue around this is anxiety. The anxiety will be so much higher than normal, and you're going to have a lot of possibly pushback from your staff saying, oh, well, I've worked from home for like the last 2.5 months. Why are you putting me at risk? Why do you want me back in the office? I've been able to work from home. Why can't I still work from home? So as an employer, the most important thing is that you're going to have to reassure your staff that they're going to be safe when they come back to work. So you need to be ensuring that all of the government guidelines are followed. You need to complete risk assessments, because your staff safety is paramount. As an employer, you can look at many different ways around this. You could look at potentially phased returns, split shifts. Obviously, you're going to have to ensure that social distancing is maintained. You might look at screens, dividers, different PPE, but this is all going to be determined by your risk assessment. COVID-19 is going to be a hot topic of conversation if you do get people back into the workplace. So you want to be ensuring that you're providing your staff with reliable and factual information rather than social media information. As I said earlier, there's so much content out there. You know, anybody can make content and put it on social media. So if you are going to get content, maybe look at gov.uk website or NHS website or the World Health Organization, get it from a reliable source, and then send that out to your employees so that they can obviously look at it and feel comfortable and confident that as their employer, you are providing them with relevant and factual information and making the workplace as safe as possible. One thing that I think may be a problem when people are back in work is I think that there may be a spike in sickness absence. I think that a lot of people are going to be nervous, and should somebody come into work maybe with a cold, I know that previously I've come into work and I've had a cold, I'd probably stay off now because I wouldn't want people to think that I was potentially a COVID carrier. And as well, I think a lot of people that are just incredibly anxious and incredibly nervous might just not cope with it very well, and actually might end up being off sick themselves at just purely the thought of coming back into the workplace. The anxiety is going to be sky high. One of my colleagues hasn't actually left their house at all since the start of this. So then the expectation of them coming back into the workplace, if they've not actually even been out on a walk or gone into a supermarket, that's a huge shift. And just because I've been going to the shop and I've been going on walks and I've been maintaining social distance, but I've been fine with that, doesn't mean that everybody else will be fine with that. It's about communicating to your staff, talking to them. Anything that you do put in place, kind of send out that communication to your staff about this is what will be happening, but allow a period of time where actually they can digest that, they can process it. And if they have any issues, that they can actually come to you, reassure them that it's okay. You will listen to them. You will, any queries they have, any concerns, you will take the time to really reassure them, listen to their issues, and put in place everything that you need to. But I think as well, for me, the important thing is, from a business perspective, it's not just your staff and your clients and your business. It's when your staff go home, they want to be able to feel that their family is still safe, that them being at work is not putting their family in any additional risk. So like I say, you really need to follow any government guidelines, because what you don't want is a workforce that don't feel safe, because they won't feel like they're valued. Productivity will probably decrease. You could have more sickness absence. In some cases, you might even have staff that could report issues to the HSE, or staff that actually take to their social media platforms about your business saying, that they don't feel safe in the workplace, they've been asked to come back. These are all things that you don't want to happen. You need to mitigate all of that as much as possible, and really take that time to communicate to staff, tell them what it is you're doing, reassure them that their safety is the most important thing before expecting people to kind of return to the workplace. So just in summary then, stay in contact with all of your staff, especially people that are furloughed, especially people that are living by themselves. Be as flexible with your staff as your work will allow. Be flexible, but encourage a routine as well, if possible. Use video to stay in contact. Don't always rely on written forms of communication. Encourage healthy habits in your staff. Signpost to other services and support tools. Use your mental health first aiders if you have any in the business. When returning to the workplace, ensure that your government guidelines are followed, and ensure that your staff feel safe to return to work, because that's really half the battle won. If they feel that you are taking their safety seriously, and that you're doing everything you possibly can, that's where they're going to feel reassured, and that's where they're going to give you that really 110% of their time and effort. So thank you very much for listening, guys, and I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
That was great, Faye. Thank you very much. Just a couple of points actually from myself. I think the one of the key words there that Faye touched on was reassurance. I think that is absolutely crucial for the mental health of staff, either furloughed, working from home, or returning to work. As Faye touched on, the health and safety communication, I think, is massive. Obviously, industries have been given different guidance and different instruction from the government now, and it's up to different companies to create risk assessments for their workplace in relation to potential COVID-19 contact, or general catching and spreading of the disease. I think communicating those control measures to people returning to work will really help ease the anxiety and help reassure them that it's a safe place to be. And I think as well, Faye mentioned that the RIDDOR side of things, the HSE are obviously taking it very, very seriously. I know they've been doing some spot checks on golf clubs and areas that have reopened, and it is a reportable disease now, as well as a dangerous occurrence if you're exposing people to people with COVID-19. So that's something to take into consideration for all employers. It's definitely being taken seriously by the HSE. As Faye mentioned, just about questions, there was 2 or 3 questions that came in. I've just seen another one. Sorry, bear with me, guys. So how do I speak to a staff member who may be having mental health issues triggered by the current situation?
Okay, so my first piece of advice is don't be afraid to kind of tackle it head on. If there is an issue, you just need to raise it directly. Encourage the person to reach out to any kind of support networks that they may have. That could be friends, family, anything like that. It could be a more structured support network. But also, and this is the thing that I think that people kind of fail to do quite often, is actually ask that person what it is they need. Because quite often, myself included, I know what's going to make me feel better. So actually having somebody ask me, what can we do? You tell us what we need to do, actually gives me then the opportunity to articulate that. Whereas I probably wouldn't volunteer that information unless I was directly asked. So I think that's the real key. Tackle it head on, speak to them directly, and ask them what it is. How can we help you? What is it you need from us?
Yeah, definitely. I fully agree. Another question was, how can I make furloughed staff still feel part of the team?
So again, I think this is really important. I think the first thing you need to do is decide which member of staff is going to be in charge, if you like, of contacting all your furloughed staff. So with my team, it's me, but actually one of my colleagues also rings my team just to mix it up a bit for them. But that's the first thing. Decide who it is going to be that contacts them, because as I've mentioned, they fall through the cracks very easily. And then just look at social ways that you can stay in contact. You know, some of my staff, this week, we've created a virtual book club. So we're going to read books, we're going to talk about it. As I've said, we're already doing the virtual exercise, the squat challenge, we're walking the Inca Trail. And my furlough staff are as included as my staff that are still working. There's no difference to me between them. And I think that's really important. Just pull them in, invite them to as much as you're doing, and then it's their choice if they want to join or not, but you know that you've offered it and that you are communicating with them, you know, as regularly as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on it earlier as well during the presentation about the virtual coffee mornings. I think that's a brilliant idea. And I think people forget sometimes, if you take our office, for example, the typical office environment, you go and make a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and you maybe have 5 or 10 minutes in the welfare facilities, and other people are doing that as well, and that becomes part of your routine. And absolutely, you might not even be in the same department as those people that you chat to for 10-15 minutes each day whilst having a brew. But yeah, you know, I think putting people back in touch, having non-work related conversations with colleagues helps maintain the routine. Well, routine's another word that pops up numerous times in your presentation. I think as well, guys in my team that have been furloughed, a couple of them especially want to be kept in the loop regarding work. So, you know, keeping them guys in the email chains, including them in emails. So if they want to read the emails, obviously limited as to what they can do when they're on furlough, but if they want to read the emails and keep in the loop as to what's going on at work, then that's another thing.
I think that's really important, because you're going to have staff that may be coming back after 2, 3, 4, 5 months of being out of the business. So actually, if you're still encouraging them to come into these meetings and be in these email trails, it's not going to be as hard a transition when they're coming back, because they're going to have a general idea of what's gone on in their department and in the business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some people are quite enjoying the break, to be honest. But you know, the couple of guys in particular that want to be kept fully in the loop, and I think I would be exactly the same. I think I would like to know what's going on. So it's bearing that in mind as well, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And it comes back to communication. Talk to them. Do they want to be in it? Do they not? You can invite them. They don't then have to come. That's 100% fine. And it's if they're on furlough. So, but, you know, making it available to them, I think that's the key. Absolutely.
Just another one. Is it the company's responsibility to manage home life and personal stress, which is not work-related?
So it's an interesting question, that actually. So if you have somebody within your business that is diagnosed with a mental health condition, under the Equality Act of 2010, as an employer, you have a duty of care to manage that. So that may be that you're going to put in reasonable adjustments, look at maybe reallocating work. You'd want to talk to them about it. As I mentioned earlier, tackle it head on, speak to them directly, talk to them about what different support networks are available. They might not know of any. You might be able to put them in touch with some. Look at, as I said, the job role. Is there anything specifically that they're finding harder than normal? It may be that actually if they're going through an anxiety issue, that actually having incoming phone calls might be a trigger. So you could look at, if possible within your business, reallocating an incoming call to a different person within that same department, and looking at any additional reasonable adjustments that you can put in place. Now, that is best practice, whether somebody has been diagnosed with a mental health condition or whether they're just really suffering at the moment and they've had no formal diagnosis. So I think it kind of comes back and feeds into the first question. Talk to people, ask them what they need. What can you do as an employer to make it easier? Even if none of what the issues are being triggered by work, if it kind of falls into work, like I say, there is that duty of care that you've got for them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely the duty of care stretches far and wide, doesn't it? Without a doubt.
Yeah, it really does.
There was one more question, just quickly. Do you think that employers better understand mental health now, and the training of mental health first aider will make a difference for helping employers and employees going forward?
So I think there's definitely more understanding around it now. I still think that a lot of people are maybe not so forthcoming with mental health conditions and mental health problems. I still personally think that there is a bit more taboo around it than there should be still, but it's getting a lot better. And I really think that if you have a mental health first aider in your workplace, you're showing your staff that you really are taking it seriously, and that you're offering them this amazing resource to be able to help them. And like I said, I'm the mental health first aider here, and I've got an open door policy. The directors have made it very clear that anybody can come talk to me at any time. They don't have to clear it with the director. They don't have to clear it with a line manager. They just come down, they just talk to me. In some instances, we actually leave, we go have a cup of coffee, like off-site. So it's really shifted the kind of ethos of the company, in my experience, my personal experience, by having a mental health first aider in your business proves to your staff that you are taking it seriously and that you're progressive and you're wanting to look after their well-being as much as you can.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it helps change the culture of the workplace. It helps in the same way that health and safety culture is massive when you're trying to implement certain policies and procedures. The openness and the culture surrounding mental health is also just as big. I think giving someone a mental health first aider to talk to is almost like opening up a forum. It's a legitimate, it's an actual forum for those people to go and discuss any issues they might have. And it may all of a sudden seem as though there's 1,000,001 issues if you have plenty of members of staff come and talk to you, but those issues were already there.
Yeah.
They might not have had the forum it might have been under their skin for months.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it really, I think you articulate that really well, actually. They're not new problems. They're just problems that people have had, but they've never had the opportunity to speak to somebody. And even though you have line managers in place and directors in place, often what I'm told is that people are very good at trivializing their own issues. It's something that we all, I think, are very good at. And actually, they don't want to raise it with the director because the directors are busy or they're in a meeting or they're doing this and that. And to have one person that is a large proportion of what I do is looking after kind of the mental health aspects of things. I think it's really opened up for people to feel a lot more confident and to be able to talk about these things and hopefully put different adjustments in place to make their working life easier.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've just sprung to mind there, Faye, actually, was we discussed it before about if the company size allows it, then maybe have a look at having 2 mental health first aiders, just as you would a normal first aider, because if it's just yourself and you've got 50 or 60 employees coming to you with their issues, is that then becoming a burden for you as the mental health first aider? So obviously, where does that stop? It's obviously got to be in proportion to the number of staff you've got. and you don't want everybody to become a mental health first aider, and then it sort of takes away the it may, like you said, it maybe trivializes it a little bit if you've got that set forum with a couple of people, if your staff numbers allow it. I think that really helps.
Yeah, definitely. And I think from my own personal experience, I was the only mental health first aider for about 6 months, and that was really hard. But now that there's others, it kind of helps to share that weight that sometimes it can be when people are coming to you day in, day out. So it's definitely worth mentioning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they're all the questions we've had, guys. So thank you very much for those. That brings us to the end of today's webinar. I hope it's been informative. I've definitely found it useful. Any questions you've got, or the information will be available on the HA website, ha.org.uk. The recording of this webinar will be emailed out to all attendees once it's downloaded and processed. So expect that in the coming days, guys. And thank you very much once again. Take care.
Thank you, guys.